I would like to give a demonstration and maybe some explanation around how the functionality of a custom field works. I think we've had some tutorials about this in the past, but JCB has improved and there is a little bit of a different look to that area. So let me do this again, and maybe I'll even try and give some code. Show you in the compiler what it's actually doing, and then we take it from there. Let's see. We have a few views here. I've imported Summon Distributor, which is the most common demo component that I've used, and it has a few custom fields. So I could actually change this. Where is it? This one. Just change it to custom, and we see that we've got a few custom fields here. The idea was that you would use demo components and then figure out how their custom fields work, and in doing so know how custom fields work. But okay, I'm gonna, well, first of all, custom fields is a way to connect a table from another view, of course, into another view. So it's the way to build relationships, and you can have more than one custom field in a table, and you can do that to build relationships. You can even take different tables and create a different combined list of values. You can really do anything with custom fields. It is maybe one of the most powerful field types in JCB. Now, if we open, let's say, editor, let me just do that. I want to show you that custom fields are basically a Joomla implementation, or how can you say that? So you have in models, you have, well, let's open the correct folder here, not this one. This one, we want to go to Summon Distributor. You have in your models folder, you have a folder called fields. Now in Joomla 4 this is changing the folder structure, but for now you'll know it's here. And so here is our custom fields. It's basically a field that you create by creating a file in this folder and then using the field name in your XML. So if you look at your form, and let's say we use sermon, you'll see that in the XML at the top we have add file field path, and you see that it ends in the model. So because of how we do it, it expects it to be here. So even, yeah, anyway, so that's why it knows to go look for the field here. Now if you scroll down, you'll see that we have the normal, and wherever it says Joomla, it means it's a normal field. But the moment it says custom, it means that this is not a normal field. This field was made custom for this component. Now this is just a note. It's like a comment. It doesn't do anything. It's just for you. So you can come here in the fields area, and there's preachers. This is the file that makes this work. So that's basically what JCB builds. He puts this in place and then builds this file, and that's it. And so in these files, depending on what type of file we are extending, so now we are extending here the list option. Now, to know what is all the available extending options, we go to Joomla Component Builders file, we go to the compiler, we go to Joomla 3, we scroll down, we'll see there is the checkboxes option, there is the field list, the field radio, and the field user. But the field user, we actually made a whole custom field to just target the field user. But the checkboxes and the radio, if you go back to JCB and create new, and you select custom, you'd see that it at some point, where is it? Let's see. It asks here, what do you extend? And you have these three options. You can extend as a list, as a radio button, or as checkboxes. That is what this extend is for. So that's currently the only three that is ready to go in JCB. There are of course others, but then we'll have to expand JCB. It doesn't reach those yet. Okay, so getting back to this, if you're using a form list, which is the most common one because you want to have a list of things in another table, then you're gonna have to populate the get options function. Now the get options function or method is requiring this chunk of code. Now instead of making it that you need to write out this whole thing, in JCB you are just adding this part for the list. For the radio, it's also just the get options. For the checkboxes, again, also just get options. So it is basically the only code we need to add. It's only with the user one which we have a get groups and exclude. And if you create in JCB, excuse me, if you here select custom user, you would see that that is exactly what you get. You get an exclude area and you get group area, and these two chunks of code is what is going to be placed in this area here. That's basically what is going to happen. So you could at any time come in here, fiddle around with this. I mean, yeah, in the PHP, when the file is created, like over here, like we've got this preacher open, right? You can come in here and fiddle with this, and then take your changes just back to the view, to JCB, and just place it in here. Not in this one. This is a user, but in a custom. Okay, so basically that means that the type is movable because it's new, but it must be something that doesn't already exist in Joomla. And if you don't know what all the field types are that exist in Joomla, then a good place to start is to go to field types and check out all these. And if that still isn't clear, you can go to this place, this URL here. This has a list of all Joomla's field types, so you could open that. Scroll down, and here is a list of all the field type names that you can't use again. You can't, well, it will be conflicting because it will break that name in that form. So best use names that are not used by Joomla. Okay, so that is that. Going back to creating a custom field, we could start with Sermon Preacher, which is the one we're looking at. So again, the name up here is just for the interface for you. It's just that you can see what is the field. So you could call this anything. It'll only fall back onto this name if there isn't a label set here. Then it will fall back onto this name. But the ideal is just set the label, you know. Then the name here, this name again, is actually the code, right? That we know. This is the type. This is what is going to be unique. The rest is sort of the same as everything else. Multiple, The default value, because it's dynamic, it's not really practical, but it's really going to be whatever you choose to be the ID of this memory, right? Required, read only, this is all. Okay, extend, here you make your choice. What kind of field do you want to create? Then button. The button feature is one of the features that are actually quite exciting. Let me show you some of that. So I was seeing a strange behavior here. I was seeing that the button says true, and then when I go to the code, I don't see the button code in here. And I was wondering, okay, what's going on here? And then I remembered, when JCB detects that there is two custom fields with the same type, it only uses one for this area and for the button, because one of them is going to be the dominant one. You can decide which one it is. So if you want to share the field type amongst multiple custom fields, so you want to reuse that field type, you can, but you want to make sure that one of them is the one which you know is going to be the leader, if you will, the one who decides how things happen, so that if you change that one, the field type updates, whereas if you change the wrong one, it doesn't do anything. So just one of those will be the dominant one. So you could do that by making it the prime PHP and make that one. So here's a little explanation of that. So if you want to be sure this field called preachers should be the dominant, and you want to say I want the buttons to be true, and now you save and compile, you will get what you expect. And so that's another feature of custom fields that is not always people are not aware of this feature, but it makes it very useful. So if we now go back to the code, we see now a new set of script here called get input, and that's really what the button how the button gets added. So it basically asks to get the attribute button, and it checks if button is true. If button is true, then it already got the parent HTML, which is what the button, the whole field is in this HTML. Then we do some, because if you have a button and someone clicks on it, you might want them to be redirected back to this page where the field is once they're done on the other page. So this is what this does here. It checks whether there is referral, and also we've added the return value as well. So if there is a return value, we are going to detect it. Oh no, wait, sorry, we are building a return value as well. That's right. Okay, so we come down here and we're starting to build the button. So there's the button being built, and that is to create. And then there's also one. Now you'll see that if the button name preacher or preachers is the same as the area to which you are the preacher, okay, because this input's name is preacher, right? If we go back here, let's show you. This is called preachers, right? And down here we have a view called preacher and preachers. So that is the single view, right? Single view name of the place the field is added. And this is the list view. So we are grabbing the field data from the preacher view, and its list name is preachers. So it's the table where the data is being captured from. Not the table where you're going to show the field, but the table where you are taking the information from. Now if you're taking it from multiple tables, then you must choose a dominant table, the one that you want to be always available. So that's what this is, as well as this. As you can see, it is obviously usually the case that this and this value is the same, but I decided to just give us the option to change the table name anyway. Okay, so we'll get to these again. Just wanted you to show you that if those two actually line up, the button name lines up with those two, then, and it checks whether this current user has authority to actually edit buttons, we come down here and we create an edit button. So, and we also write JavaScript to give that button behavior. When you click change the field, it checks, okay, is that value, and then it updates that. So you can check out this JavaScript here. That's what's used to generate the this one up here is used to generate the create button, and it also validates whether this user has create options and is the user in the admin area. Currently this feature is not available to the site area, and it's because of many conventions in the site area. It's so custom, it'll probably just break this button. So we'll have to work at this, but this is where we are at. We're able to target the admin area with this kind of button. And then if we have a button, we actually add the button declaration to the document, and then we add the buttons to the field with this input append. This class here is a Joomla class, which means we're falling back on their implementation on how to add a little tweak to the button, to the field. So we just add this, and that is how the button gets added and how it works. I mean, you can come through this. I mean, this is quite simple. It's very easy code here. This implementation here is just to make sure that the button name follows the convention and naming convention. And yeah, so that's the HTML and the JavaScript that sets up the button. And the reason why you would sometimes see the edit button there and sometimes not is about this relationship here. The button name must match one of these. So if it doesn't, it won't add it. It's sort of, yeah, it's necessary for that to be like that, because of you want to have a button that already knows where we're going, right? And how can I know those values? At the moment, the only values we have here are these values. Let's come up here. These values. We don't have other values. This is the values we have, the view ID. So that's what we have to work with. And so if there's no relationship, then how can we set the edit button? The relationship must be set. So this is the way we set the relationship. And that's quite simple, right? You just make sure that the name of the button, this one won't work. So although we set the button here to be true, it will check the name and see, this doesn't match, and it won't add a button. And that's good, because we don't want actually a button here. We want the button to show up in this one. And so when it loads this button, it'll check the name and it'll say, yeah, this one matches, and it'll add a button. So that's the right behavior. That's what we want. So if we compile it now, we didn't have to, we already did that. We can just come here and go to sermons, click here. We'll see it now has an edit option. If we select none, it has a create option. If we select this, it has an edit option. That is sort of how that relationship comes together. So where are we? Go back to the field. Okay. So, oh, this is the wrong one. That one. So now we have the button set. That's really the whole discussion. And you could, if you don't want the button set, but you want the button on the page, you set this to false. Or just leave this out. Yeah, it will take the button away completely. Now this table value is a mandatory value because it gives us a dynamic value which we can use in many places, including here. You see, a list button gets added to a page as well. If we look back here at this implementation, we see that here is a list again, but this isn't even in the view. This is in the list view. So you can have a filter dynamically in place for this. Again, in the batch as well. If you select batch, there is also one available to select. So all of these fields are still using the information that we give here. So if you don't add this information, then some of these fields functions will just disappear. It will most probably not break, but it will not be there. So if you see the fields filtering option is not working, then it's because of these settings are not right. Now, to give you a perspective on how it adds that this little drop down here, how does it do that? Well, in the code, again, if we go to that view, which is the plural preachers, and we scroll down, we have a function called, let's see, where is it? Here it is, filter. Okay, so we go up and we see there's a preachers one, import data. No, that's the import data. Well, this is the buttons, it's the filters. Looking at the wrong one. I should be looking at sermons. That's the one. So here we have a load field type, preachers, and it basically gets options. See? So this is really targeting this options area, this get options. It's calling that function. And then if we have values, it actually adds them into the filter. And it checks, are we doing batch? And if this can create, can edit, validates, yes, then it adds it to the batch as well. So we are falling back onto the field type get options, even in your filter. And so that's why we have the filters easily integrated, and the value is still using the values that you placed in the field. So that's how we get this value, that's how we get that value. Yeah, that's basically it. Okay, next we have the component name. Now the reason why these can be dynamic is because the table as well as the component name, it is possible for you to reuse fields in different admin views in different components, and then that can be dynamically updated, and it should just work. When you want to have a relationship from one table into another component altogether, then you have to hard code component A. So let's say you have component A where you have a view, admin view, where this field is used, and you want to take the data from that view into another component altogether, then you have to add component A's static name in here and not the placeholder. Okay, that's enough of that. There's been discussions on forums about this, so you could search up and find answers, I suppose. Then we have a field value and a key field. Value field and key field. I should have maybe given this different names, I suppose, because basically the key field is the ID field. Down here, that placeholder is the same as here, and I'm actually saying it over there. The field value is the text value over there. Now, the code text is basically this text value again, but it then gets placed over here. So this and that value is basically the same value. This is just the one that gets taken to the code. Well, it's what becomes available in the item. So you could change this to whatever you like. These placeholders are there only to make your life easier. If it doesn't help, then just replace them with static values. But the advantage of them being like this is you can come up here and decide, I no longer want to store the ID, because this is the value that gets stored, right? It's the value that's over on this side. The JHTML method, setting up an option, takes the second value, which is this one, as the value that gets stored in the database, and the third value as the value that gets shown in the drop-down list. So these are the two values that you're working with. Now you can add here any PHP you like. I mean, you could grab from any other table. You could do a very complicated query here and generate a whole different list, and just make sure that the IDs are not going to clash. And if you expect ID clashing, then if you need to add maybe ID underscore something for one place's information and ID underscore something else for another place's information, you could do that, because this selection concept will keep on using this pattern all across JCB. This is where you set the relationship, inheritance, structure, everything. This is just this area, and it affects everything across JCB. Wherever this field is going to be used, this is going to be available. So it means that you have a lot of freedom in this little block, because that's what's going to be at the end of the day end up being placed here. And you can get from other tables, you can do other interesting relationships here, but that is important that at least the main table is the one that you mention here, and the main component is the one you mention here, and that table's view and list views names are used here, and then the value, I mean, in this table, this one here, you are grabbing two values. You're grabbing a value to show to the user and a value to save in the database. That's the key value. The key field, that is the value that gets stored in the database if you're using this implementation. If you're not, then this doesn't really, you could just leave it out if you're not going to use this. You can hard code whatever values you want down here. It'll still work. In fact, I would encourage you to test it. I have built fields, custom fields, which I left out all of this information and only did everything in here, and it still worked because I was actually having such dynamic value retrieval based on so many other concepts of the current view. I even grabbed the ID from the input to determine the get relationship. So there are very nice options. Let me show you one of those fields. Here's the field. It's called member. It's an external. I'm using it in an external component. The field type is member. Okay, so I hard-coded the table and the component names. But down here in the option, the get option, you see I have a whole different set of PHP script, which is using custom help methods to check access, and it's also up here. We're basically, where is it? Here I'm getting the input and I'm checking, is there a referral value, is there a field ID value, and if there is, I'm using this values down into the searching and getting here. It says load the main member only. You know, there's all kinds of tricks I'm doing, and it's all happening in the PHP, and I know that this PHP is getting dumped into this area here. So the get options is what is being used across JCB for the field, and so I'm able to do anything that you can with PHP in here to determine what the options must be for the custom field. Always remembering that there needs to be in this area here, there needs to be a value which I want to be placed in the database and a value I want my user to see. These values can theoretically be exactly the same, like that, but they don't have to be. That's really, it's yeah, doesn't matter. You decide. The only reality is, if that's the value you place in the database, that's the type of value you need to set up. So if this is going to be a string, this value here, then you need to come back and you need to check that your database is not an integer. Because if you're saving a string, you want at least have a varchar, you know, about 250 or something. Now that will work, but if you change the multiple, that means can the user select more than one value? If you change that to true, again you need to change your database to at least text to be able to store, or a very big varchar, which is, you know, also possible, to store these values. If they are going to be strings, then I usually just use text. It's just like easy enough. And if it's going to be lots of options, you can go bulk. I mean, there's easy, but that's way more than I think you would ever need. But okay, so the reality is we can determine what these values are. So here I'm making sure that the member value is an ID, but I'm using a helper method to take this ID and get the member's name. Why? Because the member's name is difficult to know, because it could be different values based on different member types. Some members, they're having their name in the user table. Some members, they're having their name in the members table. So that's different places the member's name can actually live. So with this little function I wrote in a helper class, I can determine the member's name by simply the ID. Or I could add the user and the name, and it makes it quicker for the function. So this function has a little bit of a speed up if I have these values available, but like over here I don't, so I only pass the ID and it still works. And so this is the maneuverability of a selection. You can adapt this to whatever you want. The only reality is that the moment you've set your, I would call it, convention of this field type, then you need to honor that convention across your component. If you decide that you're saving a string in that field, then you need to everywhere know you're dealing with a string. If you're saying you're saving a multiple select, then you might want to do, the default storing method usually works out of the box. If it doesn't, you can come and try JSON, especially when you have multiple values, but usually it does it out of the box, and I can show you why. If we go to the compiler, we go to the fields class in the compiler, it has a function called setBuilder. Now the setBuilder function is really a little oversized at the moment. It started out small, believe me. And I could see the option of decoupling some of this out into its own separate methods, but it works very well and it's easy to understand. So if I just collapse this here, we can see more. Okay. So now we come down here, we ask what is the data type, is it set? And if it's set, we determine through various methods, okay, this is what we have, and we go ahead and we set database keys and all kinds of database relationship information. Query builder gets updated with a lot of information and stuff. So the database information gets used up here. If we have a, okay, this is a different concept. We scroll down. We want to look at the storage switches. So we're coming down here. So here we get to set up checkbox and other joint items for this view. We are basically going to check what type of field is this, if it's a subform, if it's checkboxes, or if the store method is not 0, which is default. If we have a database switch, and that it's not a tag, the type name. Okay. Now we come in here. If it's any of these fields, it will check if you set your own storage switch. Obviously, if none is set, it will fall back onto the JSON. It needs to be JSON if it's one of those fields. So it automatically builds it. So that means the default will be JSON, and if you select JSON, it will still be JSON. So that's just how this catch works. If you don't know it should be, we will in the compiler sort of help you get to the same place. Now that also means that sometimes you might have a multiple select option in a list field, which is not a subform, not checkboxes, but it's multiple. You see, the multiple gets triggered, the multiple switch, so it will still come in here. Even if you set it to be JSON, we in the compiler have the multiple switch to check, is this field having multiple selection? Yes, well then we need to save it as a JSON. That is what this does. So it takes care of the fact that it's JSON. But it mustn't be a tag, and it must have a database switch. And the database switch just means the data must be going to be stored into the database. If there's no storing of the data in the database, we obviously don't need any of this. So the multiple switch, if we search it up, we'll see that it actually gets passed to the builder right there, one of its parameters. If we go and search where the builder all is used, we'll see that the multiple switch is also in a variable. So we can go up and you can search for this, where this multiple gets set. Okay, so we started, this method didn't start with multiple, so let's scroll down, let's see where does multiple come from. There's multiple, and it's set to false to start with. Okay, so we're in the beginning of set dynamic field. we check multiple as false, then we get set field attributes, and multiple gets passed to it. So let's check field attributes. Let's go to the actual function. We see here comes multiple, but it's passed with a reference. That means if whatever we do to this value in this method will go back to where it started. So over here, we're doing a check at some point. Let's see, we got properties. Validate. Let's search that variable multiple. Let's go. Here we found the property name, which is multiple. We retrieved the value from the XML to check that the value gets added here, and we check, is that value true? And if it's true, we trip the switch to multiple. So it literally gets done through what you put into the JCB interface. This little field, where is it? If you set this to true, it will trip that behavior. So that's how that works. So the multiple switch is a powerful switch, and it really helps you even if you miss the storage. Obviously it doesn't update the database selection, but if you miss the storage thing, the default will work. Okay, but if you did that, it will still work. Even if you select one of the encryption options, it will still work because it actually is a little bit intelligent. Okay, so if we go back here and we go back to the set builder, the set builder function is one of those places where you could figure out a whole lot of things about how JCB compiles custom fields. So this is a good place to start, your research. The other one that we already looked at is the set attribute. This one here. The set attributes is where we actually work with the original values that we get from the database, the properties, as well as the actual field. So we use the field value to determine many things, and we parse every value. The reason why we remap this is to make sure we can sort of fix things if you made a mistake. So there is some things here to try and catch any human error on the side of JCB. That also means you could be doing something wrong and things still work. That happens. And then someday maybe someone decides no, they don't want to catch that fix anymore, which I'm trying to prevent. I want to keep the fix in place, and then suddenly your project doesn't work. I'm trying to avoid that, but it's good to know how it must be done right, so you just do it that way to start with. Okay, so that is basically a little bit of that. Let's go back to the field. So just in conclusion, you could add any kind of code here. Basically it is what gets the list, and it's with this string here that you are adding options to the list. So basically in this little chunk here, basically you check, do I have the items? If yes, you could decide if you wanted to put a placeholder. You see there, select a preacher. If we go to sermon, and we see that its first option is select a preacher, and it is basically this little snippet here that does that. So you could do that. Now when you do multiple select, then this doesn't work well. Just take it from me. If you up here chose to allow multiple, where is it here, true, then I would suggest you take this option out, because it will look like an option to select. It won't behave the same as now, where you actually click away and it's gone. It'll be an option, and the option is a blank. there's like a no string. That is how we detect that it's empty. It's this no string value here. Okay, so that is what that is up there. And then you start looping. This T / is basically a tab. So you could put an actual tab in there. The way I do that is I would go to and copy a tab from here. Copy, go back, and paste it in. And you could do this. In fact, most of the time this is the better way to make the code look beautiful and correctly spaced. This is often what I do, is I move all the code just one little notch. In fact, I think it needs to be 2. Yeah. So I move it all like this, and I know it sounds crazy, but that is what I do. So now the code will look very nice and good in the display. If I save it, let's make a little comment here. Hi there. And then this is set to be the prime, so save and close. And now we can go and compile this. Install. And in our preacher table we have that little hi there. And unfortunately the first value should not have a space. Yeah, the spacing of field types is still, well, many areas actually in JCB. It's like we're at a place where I don't know how we will be able to fix this so that it always behaves sort of better. Like that is now what I need to do to get that spacing just right. And I know that feels a little wrong place. That feels a little uncomfortable. But it's difficult to catch it correctly for every implementation. So currently that's the workaround. So if we compile it and we go back, we check it's correct. And there's our little note. So our spacing is working out. If you didn't add the space, it'll sometimes work out something like that. That's how it'll look. Okay. Which still will work. It just doesn't look nice. So on this view we have this as a custom field, this is a custom field, this is a category field, tag field, and this is a custom field. So we have many different custom fields, which is quite nice. List folder, this is a custom field, a multiple select custom field. External, this is a custom field, this is a custom field. So there are many custom fields on this page, and you can actually in JCB, when you've imported Sermon Distributor, if you don't know how to do that, there are tutorials. Maybe the best, quickest path to showing you that is just JCB import, then VDM packages, how to get free keys from VDM, because Sermon Distributor is one of the free packages. There are many free packages, not all of them are free, like these are not free, but they are, even Component Builder is one of the free packages that you can get a key for. So you can click here and go get a key. I tell you, the way that we have built components in JCB and all the fields that we've used, I mean, you can come here, you could go to Preacher, and all those custom fields that I just clicked, they are here. Wait, this is not the right one. Sermon is the one that had so many, so it's this one. So you can come to fields, and here they are. That's custom. That one is custom. This one. You could click this local file list. Want to see how to list a local file list with a custom field? Well, this is how I did it. I don't even have, look here, there isn't even any table here. There's even, the button is false. Extend list, yes. It doesn't have a table, doesn't have a component, none of that. I just dumped it, and you see the first one is back there. Now I get parameters. I first get the folder path from the global. So if you want to see, for example, whoa, how did he set this? How did he get this setting? Well, let's go out of this. We come back here again. And out of this. Then let's go to the component. And you'll see that there is a component config area. We open that. I'm going off the path a bit, but just bear with me. And one of those fields, let's see, is it up here? No, it's sermon S. There's obviously many in this one. Sermon, let's see, sermon menu, sermon panel box, sermon media, sermon, okay, it's not down here, execution time, download, sermon, it was up here all along, local folder path. So it's a text area, which is in sermon tab. So if we go here and we click options, there's the sermon tab, and there it is, local folder path. So you can set the local folder path for this, where the local files are going to be placed, and it is because of this file here, this field. Now if you want to check the fields, check the spelling, local folder path, close it out, and go to fields and type in local let's say local, okay, oops, foil. So there it is, it's a text one. We select that, and you can see how we built that, the simple field type with a hint, nothing fancy. Now going back to our field, if we go back to the field we were looking at, we go back to admin view. We don't need to go into the sermons, but okay, that is a easier way, right? So we go in here. Now we go again to local file. We open that. So basically in our component, we're checking this component's value for local folder, and if it hasn't got one, we fall back onto images, the image path, and that's where we start. Now we do our first option, which is please add files, and we take the local folder path result and we pass it into here, into options. Now then we load the file import classes, and we check, does the folder exist? If it doesn't, we create the folder. Now check if there's files in the folder. So we do get files. This is the function in JFolder, and if it's true, we actually take the files and we reset the get options, because remember up here we told it to add files, but now here with this we reset basically the options variable, and now we start loading the files, ping, 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 and then we give it back. And so we use both values here, see, file and file, which is actually a very easy way to do a local folder setup and make people select. Now again, we're just looking at a demo component, and we're just looking at it. External source, manual file, it's also custom. How am I doing this? Well, it's quite a complicated thing. So it is basically I'm using a helper class, get external source link. And I don't, again, look at that. There's no table. There's no external component. There's nothing. Just these values. Go look at it. If that's all it is there and it's working, that should tell you that you could do the same and get it to go. Because this is the actual issue, this result. That's what we need to have correct. So, having looked at this, get external link source. Well, that's a helper class. Where is that? Close out. Helper classes are stored in the components area. So you go to Joomla components, you go into the component, and you go to libs helpers, and here you can scroll down and get download links. It's a big method. Get wait, we should have copied that. So here is our function, get external source link. It has a few arguments, and it does a few other get external source listing, and does a few trip switches here, and that's how I eventually return something to that function, and we get that list. Okay, so that's how you should take demo components and sort of decipher its implementation structures. And don't think it's more complicated than that. It isn't. It's really simple. JCB is very resilient. It can adapt itself to specific implementations. So the custom field is, in my opinion, one of the fields I have enjoyed extremely very much. I'm using it all the time, everywhere, and I am constantly making sure, trying to ensure that its behavior remains remains stable, but also becomes sort of surprising, like just adding this value, request ID. If you look at Summon Distributor, and let's close out here, this is again this is not only for custom fields, but since we are on this explore process, if we go to main menu, and let's say we want to create a field for the Summon menu, sorry, and let's say we're gonna do series. Let's see this one. Now you see that there is a whole bunch of values here. Look at that. A whole bunch of values from Summon Distributor in relation to the series. And they all said global parallel box. I mean, this is a stunning feature, right? And it's very easy to do, because all that I had to do to get those features there is, if you take this list query ID, this value is what actually makes this a selectable item in the menu. So if we go back here, you see I have a series, and you can select test. The way that JCB set this selection option up is just by me adding this request ID to this field name. Okay, that's how that happened. Now, how did I get all the rest of the values, these, on the page as well? Let me show you. The way to get all the fields that you add to the config, for example, this, we were looking at, which one were we looking at? The series. Yeah. The way to get all the series fields that you add here to show at the menu is the fact that this name matches the site name. That's how it works. And if there is a field here that you do not want to actually have load here, there is a way to do that. So I'm going to demonstrate that quickly as part of custom fields in a way. So let's say I don't want them to set the default icon here anymore. Then I want it always just to fall back on the global. Then I can actually go to, let's see, close out here. Here's the series default icon. I can scroll down and there is this extra properties. I can say add and I can select display. Now display switch for dynamic placement in relation to the use of the field in menu and global configuration options. So the config option will only add the field to the global configuration area. Menu will add the field only to the menu area. And if you don't add this, it will add to both. So if we only want it to be in the config area, we basically just add this value here. Now let's save and close and compile to show you how it took it out. And now let's go back there and let's create a new menu. Let's again look at summon distributor series. And now we see that the icon is missing here, no longer showing up. Where are we? But if we go to the summon distributor global area and to series, we'll see that the icon is still there. So all the rest of these values are showing except this one and this one. Okay, so now let's tweak it a little more. Let's, instead of config, let's say only menu. I want the value only in menu. Save and then compile it and install, then go here, refresh, and there we have it. Now it's here. And if we go back to summon distributor and refresh, it's no longer here. So that's how you can control. The reason why all these buttons are here is because it's under this tab. The reason why all these buttons are here is because it is this view name series is the same as this tab name series. That is how the connection is made. That's how the buttons gets moved. And if you don't want a button here, then this extra display option here can toggle where you want that button to show up. And just to say none will let the button show up on both. Okay, well, we're almost over an hour now. I've said quite a lot of things. I don't know, hopefully this will help you understand a little more about custom fields and its amazing agility and ability to bring relationships together. Let me think, is there something else? Yeah, there is one more thing. Let me do that. In the components admin view, you can add what we call a linked view, right? So I am doing that here. In the sermons, basically in the preacher admin view, I'm linking the sermon on tab 2, so I'm giving it the name. And the child key, that means the place where we're getting the data. No, wait a minute. The one who the view is sermon, and in the sermon table there is a column called preacher, and that column preacher is a custom field, right? And we decided that that custom field saves the ID of the preacher, so the field name is therefore preacher, whereas the value in the current table, which is again here preacher, is going to be the ID, right? This is the relationship between these two areas, and then the placement, whether it's going to have what kind of button. Add new and close button, or add new or close button, or just a new button. These are some of the features that is available. So now sometimes it happens that you have a multiple selection and you still want to set this relationship. So there is a way to do that. If it's a multiple selection, so let's say this sermon could belong to more than one preacher, which in this case it's not, but let's just for a moment say it can. Then you could do this. Wait. That. Just that, without anything else. That will mean that it will now check whether this ID is in the array of this value. If this array is a associative array, so let's say you have the value but it's in an associative array and the association is maybe key, then you do that. So if the array looks like this, so if it looks like that, then you want to target that area, then you would do the key. If you are targeting a more than one value, so if it's this or that one, we have a one called OR. So it could be preacher or let's say maybe you have a teacher, you could say or servant. Maybe these are the columns that map to this ID. You could have the OR in there and it can link multiple values. But okay, I think I'm going way over the edge here. It's not really custom code, custom fields so much there, but because custom fields are the majority of the time used to set up this relationship, right? You set up these relationships with custom fields. That is where that maneuverability comes in, and the linking of a table into another one. Okay, well, thanks for watching. It's been an hour of your time. I hope it's been worth it. Thank you. Okay.